college football. Deion Sanders is not yet committing to a starting quarterback for Colorado's matchup against Houston on Friday. So initially, ESPN college football reporter Pete Thamel reported yesterday on Tuesday that sophomore Ryan Staub would get the start over previous starter Kaidon Salter. And Deion Sanders said, quote, "I'm not confirming it. None of y'all know that." He said, "We're not like that. We're good. We have capable guys. Staub has been doing a phenomenal job doing and getting the majority of the reps, but I haven't made that assessment and decision yet. You know, in today's media, we don't care about being correct anymore. We just want to be first," unquote, end quote there. So he did say there that Staub has been getting a majority of the first team reps in practice this week after throwing for 157 yards, 2 touchdowns against Delaware this past weekend. Now, all 3 quarterbacks in that quarterback room, Staub, Salter, and freshman Julian Lewis, got some action against Delaware, but Staub did have far and beyond the best numbers of the 3 there. So, Deion Sanders said, I know exactly how to handle the quarterback situation. I'm not going to say it, but yeah, I'm not lost for direction. Now, however this quarterback situation pans out, it does seem like, at least from last week, getting at least a little bit of a sample size from all 3 of these quarterbacks, that Staub should be the guy, just based off of that action. And I do totally trust Deion Sanders that he has a great grasp on this quarterback situation. I don't think anyone is doubting the coaching ability of Deion Sanders. And if you are, that's on you. I just have a problem with the way that Deion Sanders has approached the media as far as the situation is concerned. Deion Sanders said, everybody just wants to be right. What happened to quality journalism? I think that's so disrespectful to say that to a room of reporters who have dedicated their lives and their livelihood is tied to covering Colorado football, telling the stories about Deion Sanders and all of these athletes, putting in the work, the late nights, the early mornings, all the caffeine that it takes to cover these teams. And I know everybody is playing the world's tiniest violin for people who get to talk about and write about and watch football. I get it. We are the luckiest people in the world. But it feels to me that Deion Sanders is trying to find a tactical advantage here any way that he can in keeping the quarterback situation incredibly vague. I get it. He's not the only coach, not the first coach, not the last coach that has ever done that. But to undermine the credentials of the media in the process just doesn't feel right to me, Fitzy.
I think 2 things can be true. There's a way to do it, and there's a way not to do it. And just like he wants to be covered with a certain tone, I think it's fair to also say the people that are doing their job want a certain tone in that response. And also the questions weren't unreasonable. This is where everybody loves to just hop on mainstream media as the devil in everything that they do. And I would just ask you, if everybody stopped covering your favorite team, how would you read about your favorite team? At the end of the day, they weren't asking anything strange or unjust. So I didn't love the reaction. Let's stick with some college football news for my first point of the day. For the second straight year, things just got much more difficult at the quarterback position for UNLV. UNLV quarterback Alex Orji out for the remainder of the season due to an injury. Essentially, he ripped a hamstring off the knee. So this is a catastrophic injury for the transfer that came over to UNLV with high expectations. UNLV is a team that's sitting right on the precipice of playoff opportunity. Part of the reason the job has become appealing for somebody like Dan Mullen is that there is a real shot at the group of 6 playoff opportunity for UNLV. They were in that running last year, weren't unfortunately able to get there, but they look like they're going to be in the running again this year. Now, all of a sudden, quickly, depth is what's going to be tested. A lot of money was spent on this roster for this type of team, and a lot of expectations were heaped on them. Dan Mullen is now going to have to quickly earn that cash, though, because, frankly, what do we all know? We know you have to be deep in the most important positions if you want to have a shot to compete. UNLV still has plenty of football left to play in front of them, but for a program that is finally starting to catch real momentum and finally starting to look like it can be a year-in and year-out contender for whatever the college football playoff looks like, this is a catastrophic blow. I will remind everybody, though, a year ago right now, due to NIL disputes, money disputes, UNLV was in a situation where they suddenly lost their starting quarterback. And the easy narrative was the sky was falling. And instead, UNLV continued right along the path, putting themselves in that conversation. Let's see if this year's team, filled with plenty of transfers and a new vision under a new head coach, can do the same. But even if they can do the same, it's fair to acknowledge that job just got a lot more difficult. Also, Twitter, stop showing the injury. It is just brutal to watch, Carolina. It is just one of those ugly. You see it, and immediately you're like, yep, don't need to see that again. I feel for the poor kid. Like, Alex Orji is somebody that had a lot of expectations at Michigan, was really trying to get his second chance at UNLV, That's not going to come. Let's continue the college football conversation going with our main point of the hour, and that our college football rankings are out there, and it's curious. We get the AP poll. Now, I think you and I can both agree that the AP poll is not something that, we stand on, right? Like, I'm not planting the flag of the AP poll and saying this really means something. But it does mean something, because for casual fans that are looking at their TV, if they see a number 3 next to LSU's name, it tells them right away, this team has high expectations, right? Like, so there is value to this. So when you looked at it, what was your first, your major takeaway from this weekend in the AP poll?
Well, a lot of discourse about this on social media. Let's just, chill out a little bit, everybody. One of my biggest takeaways was that I think everybody values quality losses over some rinky-dink wins. Now, look, we're only going into week 3. We only have a 2-week sample size. There's only so much that we can really know about these teams. And there's still massive question marks about who certain teams are. Is Alabama the team that lost to Florida State, or are they the team that dropped 73 on Louisiana Monroe? Maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle. But I look at a team like Texas that played Ohio State, then the number 3 team in the country, in their own house, the reigning national champions. They lost that game. They didn't look that great in the process either. But Texas is still a top 10 team in the country over maybe a team like Tennessee, who is 2-0. They played Syracuse, a fine opponent. And then they played, insert, in directional school here. So although Tennessee is undefeated, they deserve to be in the top 25. Texas is ranked above them because they have that quote unquote quality loss, which I think is just the funniest little term that we use every single year around November and December once the college football playoff rankings come out. Well, this team has a more quality loss than that team. It feels like a very, funny little conundrum there. But that was one of my bigger takeaways, was you will get rewarded, at least right now where it stands. Same thing with Notre Dame. They lost to Miami week 1. They're still a top 10 team. You will get rewarded for scheduling these difficult games and being in these difficult games, being competitive against non-conference Power 4 opponents early in the season more than you will if you play cupcakes in the first 2 weeks.
And I think that they have to, right? Like, to that point, Caroline, this is what we always talk about. Like, what the hell is the point of scheduling anybody if you are not rewarded for scheduling somebody? So, look,
Yes.
I'll be consistent with the NFL process of it. Like, I didn't walk away from the Bills-Ravens game suddenly devaluing Baltimore, just like I'm not going to walk away from 2 quality college football teams that play each other. Like, I'm not going to turn Tennessee, Georgia this weekend into some grandiose statement about the sea of suck that the loser lives in, if we turn around and at the same time we have a game, for another team against a cupcake. Like, I think we have to put value in who you're playing. That's one of the hardest things about college football, is that when everybody says they want equity, you can't have equity because the quality of opponent is so different and there's no standardizing and scheduling. At the end of the day, you play 17 games in the NFL. 14 of the 17 games that you play every year will be common opponents with the other teams in your division. That's a lot. But part of the reason the NFL didn't change their playoff seeding is because they realized that even within that, they didn't have enough schedule parity. Like, there is no schedule parity in college football. So trying to figure out how to value, of course, I don't care if Tennessee goes out and loses to Georgia. I'm still going to look at that loss and I'm going to ask myself, what was the eye test in that loss? Like, that's part of the process in college football, love it or hate it.
That's the important context that I think is necessary. I think everybody so badly wants to have everything figured out, and everybody wants to have a kind of very black and white approach to all of it, when it's not. College football is incredibly gray. It's not just results that matters in these rankings. Results shouldn't be the only thing that matters in these rankings. So while I say, you're going to get rewarded for scheduling these difficult non-conference games, well, you also get rewarded for looking good in these difficult non-conference games, even if it's in a loss. Because I look at the way that Notre Dame and Clemson are ranked, right? Well, Notre Dame is 1-1, just like Clemson is 1-1. Well, Notre Dame's 1-0 because they had a bye in week 2. I don't know. Let's take it up with them. But Notre Dame was much more competitive in their loss to Miami than Clemson looked competitive in their loss to LSU. Same thing. You brought up Tennessee, Georgia this weekend. We have so many incredible matchups this weekend. Notre Dame, Texas A&M, Florida, LSU. Week 3 is just a masterclass. But if Tennessee loses by 28 to Georgia, well, that feels really different than Tennessee losing by a touchdown.
Yeah, there is no doubt about that. And that's That's part of what we have to have. To your point, where everybody wants it to be black or white, one of my favorite things about college football Twitter, by the way, is a delight in and of itself. One of my favorite things
Oh,
about college
it's
football
great.
Twitter is you'll see one person say, "This is so clear, it has to be this." And the next tweet will say, "This is so clear, it has to be this." And they're talking about the opposite sides of the same issue. Nothing is clear about college football. This is clear to me, might be a fair statement, but not clear to everybody because, frankly, so many people see it in multiple ways. I will ask you this. Is the SEC, in your mind, really deserving of 11 teams in the top 25? 11? Are you really buying that Auburn and Missouri are top 25 football teams this year, right now, as we sit?
Well, Auburn got a decent week one win against, not decent, a good week one win against Baylor. And then Missouri went in and beat Kansas this past weekend. And Kansas was a team that I think everybody kind of viewed as a dark horse college football playoff contender because it really could be anybody's Big 12. Kansas has an incredibly, daunting quarterback in Jalen Daniels. So I think that they do deserve to be in the top 25 because they did beat quality non-conference Power 4 opponents. There is a certain, and there's everybody outside of the SEC believes that there is an SEC bias. And I do think that's probably true to a certain extent. Understanding that I graduated from an SEC school, I grew up in a family that has, several, SEC alma maters from it. I host shows on SEC radio. I get it. I had a little SEC bias in me as well. But I do think that there is an SEC bias that exists because everybody probably assumes that the middle of the pack of the SEC is just better than the middle of the pack in any other conference. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes that's not true, but there is a BOD, a benefit of the doubt, that I do think sometimes SEC teams get over other conferences. And I think it's fair to say, Fitz, that the top of the Big Ten right now, from what we know, is better than the top of the SEC. Because the top of the SEC, I don't think there's one team that stands far and above the rest of the conference. Yes, there's tiers, but there's not that one team that's like, wow, that's the team to beat. In the Big Ten, Ohio State does look like one of the best teams in the country and looks far and beyond like the best team in the Big Ten, Penn State as well. But I think that the SEC in totality is a better conference than the Big Ten because I think that there are 6, 7, 8 teams in the SEC that could legitimately be in the college football playoff conversation. I cannot say that about the Big Ten. So the top of the Big Ten is probably better. The SEC is probably deeper. So maybe with that context and that kind of logic, then yeah, there should be 11 teams in the SEC that are deserving of a spot in the top 25.
My issue comes let me be a nerd for a second. My issue comes with the thought of the phrase bias. Okay, so like my new obsession, as you know, like I like to listen to weird things when I work out. So like I don't like music; it just doesn't do it for me. So I, for the longest time, have listened to episodes of Law and Order. But now I'm into like straight courtroom camera stuff. So like Karen's in the courtroom, sovereign citizens in the courtroom, and so I heard a guy arguing the sovereign citizen argument in the courtroom. And the judge kept saying, hey, just because I agree with the prosecutor doesn't mean that we are colluding against you. It means I heard their legal case and I agree with it. And the guy just couldn't get that through his head. I say that when it comes to bias because everybody says, and look, I have no SEC bias. I have no college football bias at all. The phrase SEC bias bothers me at its core, though, because just because a group of people genuinely believe the SEC is better does not mean they're biased. It means that their opinion differs from some other opinions. And that's a hard lesson. Like the concept, and look, I don't think Auburn is a great football team. Right now, on a neutral field, if I had Auburn versus Michigan State, it's kind of a toss-up. And I don't think Michigan State's very good either. I just think a lot of these
for the record, I'm taking
mid teams. But also for the record, I really don't care who the 22nd team is versus the 28th team. I think it's all minutia that doesn't really matter. So to me, as the sort of nihilist in the room, and nothing matters, right? Like, so the concept of bias, I think what people don't ever want to accept is that there are a lot of people out there that just simply believe Missouri is a better football team than Wisconsin. And they're allowed to have that belief. We got a question in the YouTube comment. Christopher Cummins in the YouTube just says, Nebraska? With a question mark. Now, I think he's saying Nebraska belongs in the top 25, or he's just saying, Nebraska, what do we think? But this is one of the hard parts about it. Like, I personally would love to put Nebraska in the top 25 because I just think that's kind of fun. But, okay, they beat Cincinnati and they beat Akron. Like, I have no, like, do we have any
And
idea?
they
Really?
barely beat Cincinnati.
Yeah, 100%. And so, like, I think the honest answer right now is if you actually injected truth serum in the veins of voters everywhere is probably we don't know. You got to put together a top 25. I wish I had an AP top 25 vote. I would absolutely be honored to ever get that opportunity. I also think that it's got to be wildly difficult Saturday at 2 a.m. when the day's action is done to then ask yourself, did I see enough of Nebraska to feel comfortable with where I'm putting Nebraska versus where I'm putting UNLV for beating UCLA? I don't know, so I think that's fair. Let me ask you, let me make a bold statement to you. I just want to get your take on this. If there's anything that I feel like I learned from this AP poll right now as we stand today, you just mentioned the Big Ten is better at the top. I would make the argument that there are only 4 teams in the country right now that are truly national championship contenders: Ohio State, Penn State, LSU, and Oregon. To me, the drop-off after Oregon to Miami, if I'm neutral field, you might be able to convince me Georgia's in that if I can ever feel comfortable with Georgia's quarterback situation and their offense to come through. You might convince me that Texas can be there if Arch develops. But as we stand right now, just based on if we were playing for a natty today, I think those 4 teams are clearly in a different category than the rest.
I think you're wrong. It's one team and it's LSU. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I disagree. LSU and Notre Dame play at a neutral site today, which, man, oh man, can you imagine the drama with that matchup? Who's favored?
LSU.
I don't know.
Neutral site, LSU.
By how much?
LSU.
2.5? 3.5?
Yeah. 2.5.
Okay, well, if a spread on a neutral site is 2.5, I mean, I can't consider just one of those teams a national championship contender. Same thing, Penn State, Georgia. What's the spread at a neutral site?
Oh, that one's 1.5. 1.5 Penn State.
Right? Okay, so I know that
but I don't trust the quarterback. I'm allowed to not trust the quarterback. I don't trust the quarterback.
Do you trust Kirby Smart? I do. Like, and there is
fair.
a benefit of the doubt that I give to Georgia and other. I'll give it to Georgia. I'll give it to Dan Lanning. Certain coaches that I'm like, I just trust you because you've earned that and you deserve that kind of trust. So I think, if on a neutral site, those 2 teams have a spread of less than a field goal, then I think that you have to put those teams in the same kind of tier. We just don't have enough of a sample size, because it's fair to say I don't really trust Gunnar Stockton. Fair. But I think we're going to learn a whole lot more about Gunnar Stockton in this Georgia team. I don't really trust Arch Manning that much right now. That doesn't mean that I don't think that Arch Manning can't be a Heisman Trophy contender come October. Same thing. I mean, like, I'll even look at Oklahoma, South Carolina. Like, that's the 10th ranked team, 11th and 13th ranked teams in the country, respectively. South Carolina, Oklahoma. What's the spread on a neutral site?
Yeah, that's also tight.
Like,
2.5.
I think either of those teams could be in the conversation. So I disagree. I think that there's probably 15, 16, 17 teams that we could be talking about that are legitimate playoff contenders. Now, playoff contender and championship contender in this 12-team playoff situation, I think are 2 different things, because just because you make the playoff doesn't mean that you're a championship contender. It did in a 4-team playoff. In a 12-team playoff, that field is just too wide. But I think that this is the most open that college football has felt in a really long time.
It is the most open it's felt in a long time for the playoffs. I disagree about the championship. And it doesn't mean I hate anybody's favorite team. It just shows you that I have trust issues, which is probably more of a life statement than anything. Okay.
Wait, also, let me say, where's Mississippi State? Rank Mississippi State. Give them the credit that they are due.
You need another one shoved in there? I mean, how many? Like, why don't we just rank the entire SEC for Caroline Fenton and her SEC bias?
Everybody says, hey, where's my team? Where's my team? Where's my team? There's only 25 slots. Mississippi State just beat the 12th ranked team in the country. Just saying.